I'm Donald Phelps. I was a sergeant in the 333rd Infantry of the 84th Division. We found that we could sneak up to pillboxes easily at night, hit and run. The biggest problem in this type of action was that the regular emplacements of the German army in the pillboxes had everything so zeroed in that all major road intersections were under constant interdicting fire.
By the 21st of November, the Siegfried Line had been dented. The objectives in and around Geilenkirchen had been taken. The 84th now headed for the Rohr River, a few miles distant. General Bowling picked the village of Lenneck as the ideal location for the planned river crossing.
Before our actual combat experience, we always thought that engineers were people who came along after we passed through and repaired bridges and so forth. We actually had engineer squads with each rifle platoon whose function was to place explosive charges in pillbox and braziers, and this helped a great deal in overcoming this resistance.
In the murderous frontal attack that followed, several discoveries were made. All sectors of the German Western Front had strict orders to relinquish as little German territory as possible. Every inch of ground was to be defended tenaciously. The uncertainty concerning the Allied situation posed an especially conspicuous problem.
One never knows what the enemy has up his sleeve. One does not know for certain how strong he is. One does not know about his disposition. Many things can only be guessed. But there are certain impressions one does acquire. We were of the opinion that the American unit, excellently equipped and under good leadership, was headed for ultimate success, confident of victory. Besides, the command was prudent, advancing step by step, and justly trying to avoid bloodshed wherever possible.
Geführt, siegessicher dem Erfolg entgegensteuerte.
By the end of November, the German defenses west of the Ruhr had been either captured or neutralized by men of the 84th Division. On December 2nd, the coveted prize of Lenneck fell to the neighboring 102nd Division.
To sum up the actions of the 84th Division in the Geilenkirchen area in the Siegfried Line, it had reduced or captured 8 strong points or villages. It had captured or destroyed over 112 bunkers. It had captured 28 officers and over 1,500 enlisted men. It had engaged 15 different kinds of German units, to include SS troops and Panzer units. And we might say, as an overall sum up, every mission had been accomplished.
While the Allies made preparations for the crossing of the Ruhr, a major offensive was about to be launched by the combined German forces. The offensive, codenamed Watch on the Rhine, would be more generally known as the Battle of the Bulge. It was Hitler's last opportunity to achieve the initiative on the Western Front, and at least 28 divisions would be engaged in this desperate gamble.
am on this afternoon is representative of those around Marsh, Belgium that are now being farmed again. In December of 1944, much in contrast, these fields were not being farmed. There were streams of refugees all through the area, again moving out because the intelligence was, or their rumors were, that the Germans again were coming into the town of Marsh. About 9 o'clock on the morning of the 20th of December, General Bowling, along with a couple of staff officers, an aide, and 4 MPs, went to Verviers, Belgium, where the First Army headquarters was. He asked what the enemy information was, and the only thing they could tell him was it was fluid. Also, he asked for what the mission of the division would be in the Marsh area. He was told that there the division should go into an assembly area.
As the front bulged further westward, the principal road centers of La Ruche and Saint-Vie, Belgium, fell to the Germans. Bastogne was encircled and its capitulation seemed certain. Unless the town of Marsh, Belgium, remained in Allied hands, it seemed probable that the Germans could take the River Meuse and sweep on to Paris. The 84th Division was ordered to withdraw from its positions on the Rohr and take up a defensive line along the Marsh-Houghton Road.
It was at this time that we got sudden orders to move. We were loaded into the Army trucks, and we started moving back. We heard all kinds of rumors. We heard the Germans had broken through. We heard there was a big offensive. Everything was confused, but all we knew, we were on the road and moving again. Of course, it had only been a month before that we'd moved up by truck, so we were kind of used to it. But this was a night move, in the dark, around the back corners, and orders were changed constantly. We never knew from one minute to the next what was going on. On our way back, we ran into trailers bringing up assault boats to cross rivers with. They apparently were for us, but we weren't going to be there to be with them. We finally found that at the end of this truck route, which was very circuitous, we ended up in the town of Marsh in Belgium. And although our orders were a little unclear, we were told to hold the town at all costs. We had our first snow at this point, and digging foxholes in icy ground was a little difficult. But we kept always on the move. And our company seemed to be ending up as division reserve. So we were sent here and there on little jobs and filling up the gaps and trying to get the situation under control.
We spent our first night in Belgium billeted in a huge stone barn with hay and big fat cows and horses chomping around us, and we were excited to be where once again there was some life. We went down the road and had a nice chicken dinner with some eggs and milk, food that we hadn't had, it seemed like weeks and weeks. And there seemed to be no nervousness about Germans until later on that night when we spotted way across the valley a column of tanks going up the road, and somebody pointed out that those were German tanks, and we had been told we were miles and miles behind the front. And that's when we realized that there was a good deal of confusion in the general picture in Belgium. Well, after that, we went by truck to a little town called Wanlan and met a very lovely Belgian woman in a French or a Belgian chateau who had 2 daughters, and she was just getting them into the car to drive them to Brussels. She said they had an appointment with the oculist, and it was only later that we realized she was fleeing as fast as she could, and she knew that the situation was very bad. And later on that night, we had our first encounter with some German tanks which came along and fired at us, and we fired back, and they went on back the road that they'd come from, but we realized we were in what they call a fluid situation, with nobody quite certain where the front lines were, least of all us.
I'm Major General Bill Sutton, and I was a battalion commander in General Bowling's 84th Rail Splitter Division during World War II. I arrived at the rear CP of the 84th Division in Holland on the 20th of December 1944 and moved down with the division to Marsh, Belgium on the 22nd of December. To say that the situation was fluid is putting it lightly. In Marsh, Belgium, every other house was occupied by Germans, and there was firing up and down the streets. The 334th Infantry had organized positions along the front edge of the Marsh-Houghton Ridge. I can remember that the foxholes were sometimes 150 yards apart, and they'd been dug in frozen ground, sometimes with the aid of explosives. The position was considerably overextended, and various pockets of German tanks and infantry existed all up and down the line. And during the day, the Germans had infiltrated tanks and infantry into a wooded area back of the front lines and in front of the reserve elements. And they were discovered quite by accident by a small unit going up to reinforce an attack. Took the wrong road and ran into this pocket of German tanks and infantry. And they backed off and reported this. The 84th Division Artillery fired on this pocket, which was pretty well defined, and they knocked out all of these tanks and killed several hundred Germans. When the artillery had finished firing, one battalion, I remember the 326th, had only 6 rounds of ammunition left. We had other ammunition on the way, but no one knew exactly when it would get there, and it was a rather touch-and-go situation. There are many things imprinted on my mind that will make me always remember the kind of stuff our American soldiers were made of. One incident in particular occurred in the Ardennes during the Battle of the Bulge. We were advancing toward Bale, Belgium, and a mortar shell came in and wounded several men right close around me. There was one man that was almost in arm's reach of me, and I could see that he was hit badly, with the back of his head practically blown off, and he was in a state of shock. I tried to comfort the man, prop his head up until the medics could reach him, and all this time, and I shall never forget this man was trying to apologize for me for being hit, and sorry, almost crying, because he would not get to carry on with the battalion and continue the fight.
The Marsh-Houghton line, situated as it was at the extreme tip of the Bulge, received the full weight of the German attack. Chance had placed the fate of this offensive in the hands of an American infantry division. For the men of the 84th, there was no question as to what must be done. See it next on The Big Picture.